very kindly agreed to co-host with me because I thought, if there's one thing I've learnt standing in front of 27 young people every week is they don't want to listen to just an old person. So I've recruited some youth to help me.
So kia ora everyone, I'm Ryan, and so to all our parents, our whānau, our community leaders and our school staff members, thank you so much for coming to really celebrate the incredible milestone and see the progress that these students have made so far. To our host organisations, thank you so much for facilitating these discussions and allowing these students to kind of explore these focus areas within the niches that your organisation explores. And finally, to the students, thank you guys so much for all the hard work you've put in so far. It has been really inspiring for me to really see how much you guys care about this and how much effort and time you're putting into this both inside and outside of EarthMinds.
I'll start obviously with just a little bit of health and safety. The bathrooms is a very eco-friendly bathroom. You might have seen it on the way in, just out through the doors. In case of a real fire, car park, as well as earthquakes, I think you guys know what to do. But I definitely want to just echo that acknowledgement for the host organisations in the room. Thank you for your help in the last 6 weeks as we experiment with this. I want to acknowledge our Deputy Mayor Rohan, who's very kindly agreed to be here, and Rachel, who leads the climate work at the council. So thank you. Look, I hope you are prepared to be dazzled by big, tough questions coming your way. So EarthMinds, this is really just an initiative to try and get young people to be able to really engage with some of the issues that we see locally. Now, instead of me talking about it a whole lot, we thought we would show you instead, over a course of about 3 minutes, what the last 6 weeks has been about. So bear with me while we turn on a little video. So big applause to the teams who have made it so far. Well done, guys. Now, I will just run a little quiz to begin with. Oh, I'm skipping ahead of some slides. I'm giving you... here we go. Sorry. Okay, quiz. Does anyone recognize this guy? Some random old white guy, right? No one recognizes him. This person is arguably responsible for saving over 1 billion lives. He is arguably the world's greatest superhero, and as we've just shown, no one knows about him. So in 1960s, the world was quite concerned about this idea that there was going to be a major population overload. There was a lot of work being done at the time, and society took it quite seriously, that there was just no way that the world could feed the billions of people that were coming. And in fact, I think there's a quote from a very specific book written by a well-regarded expert at the time. In the 1970s and 80s, so looking forward to the next 2 decades, hundreds of millions of people will starve to death in spite of any programs we embark upon now. So people were pretty smart then, but this was actually something they were very worried about. This guy, on the other hand, his name is Norman Borlaug. So if you're going to go look him up when you get home, Norman Borlaug. He got to work. He's a plant scientist. And so through innovation and experimentation, he developed lots of different wheat strains. They're called semi-dwarf wheat strains. And what that meant, at the time, the concerns here were particularly in Africa and Asia and Latin America, where hundreds of millions of people were predicted to join the population. It meant that they could triple the yields in these places, which saved literally hundreds and millions and a billion lives. So the message there is we face obviously lots of challenges ahead of us, but innovation plays a remarkable role. And I hope as you guys listen today, and as many of these young leaders are looking at ways in which they can engage with society, that serves as a bit of a beacon for the amazing things that can be done with innovation and some hard work.
Yeah, so just before we have the presentations, just a little reminder that these are by no means finished solutions. Over the past 6 weeks, they've really focused on investigating the problem. They've looked at how it affects us, whether that's locally in Nelson, Tasman, in New Zealand, or globally. They've looked at who is affected, what specific demographics or what specific areas, and they've looked at what has been done so far, whether that's in New Zealand or abroad. And so with all this knowledge, they've really looked at the gaps within Nelson Tasman, what we're missing, to allow them to craft a strong problem statement, which will enable them to kind of work towards a solution next term.
Cool. Now, I'm pretty sure you guys don't want to listen to us talk, but before we let the teams up on here, you get to do something as well. So don't expect us to sit there tonight. So you'll see that there's a little bit of paper, hopefully, that you've sat on or is near you. So those bits of paper are going to be things that you can provide feedback on as the teams come up. So hopefully you've got a pen, and alongside each of the 6 teams that will present tonight, you'll get the chance to give any feedback to the teams. But we're going to make this a little bit interactive. So teams, I want you to kind of see who's in the audience, and for you to know who's in the audience. I'm going to read out a few categories, and I'd just like to, for you to stand up if you belong to that category, so that the teams, when they finish presenting, can come and hit you up if they want to. Okay, so we'll start with an easy one. Let me see where my categories are. Parents and whānau. Can I just get you to stand up so we know who you are? Oh, all right, good. Good showing. Okay, thank you. Educators or school staff? Anyone from school? Oh, awesome. Okay. Council or public service? Excellent. Okay. Paying attention, students. These are the people you get asked questions of later on. Anyone from a business or a company of some kind? Fantastic. Okay. And then lastly, any willing mentors or advisors? Oh, okay. All right. Okay, cool. Thank you. All right, so we will get started. So this is going to be the order. We're going to first up have the water team. What they've been told is they're going to get about 5 minutes, give or take a minute. And then after that, we'll give each team and you guys an opportunity for 1 or 2 questions. So without further ado, I think we'll ask the water team to come up. Come on up, water.
Hi guys, I'm Chinolia. This is Harry, that's Charlotte, and that's Ariana, and we're the water sedimentation team.
Aotearoa contributes to 1.7% of total world erosion, despite us only being 0.2% of global land area. Locally, non-native trees, like pine, cover 24% of the entire land area of Nelson. Sedimentation is harmful to the environment because it carries nutrients that promote growth of harmful slime algae, clogs the gills of fish, lowers visibility, making it harder for sea life to hunt and sea plants to photosynthesize, ruins habitats by changing the material of riverbeds. This is why our group has decided to explore sedimentation runoff due to improper forestry practices.
Our focus is finding eco-friendly and affordable ways to prevent sedimentation. Eco-friendly solutions won't further damage our environment. and affordable solutions will encourage forestry companies to make the switch to better solutions. Here's a not-so-fun fact for you. Worldwide, reservoirs lose about 1% of their water capacity per year due to sedimentation. This may not seem like a big number, but this means that within 100 to 150 years, many reservoirs will be completely filled with sediment, reducing their ability to provide drinking, irrigation, and energy.
What solutions have been tried before? Globally, several countries have tried to implement incentives for forestry companies to do more sustainable practices. But this is often incredibly expensive, with countries like Austria spending over 350 million euros just last year to try and support forestry companies. In New Zealand, this is not very sustainable. On a smaller scale, companies and groups such as in Nelson, they are using drones to survey potential forestry sites and make sure that they're doing the right practices. But because this technology is so incredibly new and hasn't been used to the extent that it could possibly be used, we don't have enough information about it to know that this will actually be useful practice.
What we can learn from it. We can learn what other countries done and we can find similarities with their problems to solve ours. We can learn about their technology, that the people they use to collect data, and how they learn about sedimentation. We can learn about the sources that other countries use to reduce their sedimentation, which helps us to reduce ours quicker. And hopefully we can reduce sedimentation quicker than we think.
What does our group actually want to achieve? We want to find a way for forestry companies to reduce up to 30% of their sedimentation into rivers. And we want to do this without costing them more than 6% of their profit margins. The reason we want to achieve both of these things is even if it doesn't have a massive impact on the amount of sedimentation, it makes it much more achievable for forestry companies to actually implement. We don't want to have a massive impact on profit margins or require the government to spend massive amounts of money providing incentives for forestry companies to actually implement our solution.
The areas we have decided to focus on for further exploration are efficiency, information, and enforcement. Firstly, efficiency. Forestry industries use sediment traps and filtration salts to reduce sediment entering our streams. While these methods work at a small scale, with more drastic weather conditions, they are often made redundant. They also tend to need high maintenance. We aim to explore alternative ways to trap sediment that are effective and inexpensive. Secondly, we are focused on enforcement when companies fail to comply with the National Environmental Standard. We believe that higher stakes would encourage companies to better implement necessary regulations. We also believe that the current standard is too lenient, especially with heightening weather conditions. Finally, we're looking into data collection taken to ensure companies are following legal regulations. Currently, companies are checked infrequently and therefore are given room to slack.
Currently, there are several organisations working on removing the sediment from our rivers, who we can contact for help and funding, such as Nelson City Council, Tasman City Council, Friends of the Maitai, and Air, Land, Water Aotearoa. We are also planning on reaching out to forestry companies about more sustainable and better working solutions.
Thank you guys for listening to us, and we hope that we convince you guys that sedimentation is a big problem, and a special thanks to Jerry for helping us.
You don't escape to that. No, you don't get to escape that quickly.
In your research, did you find any countries that had effective policy around like setbacks from rivers or logging practices itself that could be advantageous?
Yeah, so many countries in like Germany and Austria have practices around safer forestry, such as taking out smaller portions of land, which still provides cover for sedimentation. But as I mentioned before, this has much lower profit margins for forestry companies, and so it requires subsidies and incentives for the government to actually pay in order to make this a thing that happens in countries.
Is that me now?
Yeah.
Kia ora. Hey, I was really impressed with your presentation and the information you're putting together. It's terrific. I like the fact that you had that 30% reduction target and you'd aligned it with a profit reduction limit for the company. I'd be interested to know how you reached those figures, the 30% and the 6%, because I think it's really impressive you've got them in there.
Yeah, sorry, I thought I might have turned it off. We wanted to, I did some research into the amount of money, that profit that these companies actually make. I didn't want the number to go larger than $500 million for the New Zealand government to have to pay, so that was around 6 to 7%, and I thought we should keep it lower to try and make it a better incentive. The 30% reduction was to try and keep it achievable. We felt like because there is so much room to be improved, a 30% reduction was definitely possible with the way that we did it, and we all sort of agreed that that seemed a relatively good number.
Shall we go one more over there?
Very impressive indeed. I've got one idea. It may be worthwhile for you guys to contact Landcare Research, the hydrologists there. So that there's Andrew Fenimore here, who's now retired, but as a hydrologist who's worked a lot on these sorts of areas, so it might be useful.
Thank you.
Thanks for your presentation, guys. It's a really important issue for Nelson and for New Zealand. Just wondering if you've come upon any options for what forestry companies can do. You talked about sediment traps. Is there any other things that forestry companies can be doing?
We actually had a representative from a forestry company come and speak to us. He showed us a couple of methods, obviously sediment traps, but also when you're cutting down trees, leaving enough cover provided by the trees to stop the rain from coming down into the sediment and washing it into the river.
Also planting grass seed is good, and buffer zones between rivers and the forestry also makes a huge difference.
There are certain laws relating to how far or close to a river you can plant and how steep the angle can be. So how much sediment is going to go into the river. So there are like stuff around that, but they need to be tighter.
Our big problem is people are throwing away clothes that could still be worn or recycled. This leads to more people buying fast fashion, which creates pollution and adds tons of waste to landfills. In New Zealand, about 18,000 tons of textile waste is thrown away every year. Nelson, with a population of around 53,000 people, contributes to that. And the sad thing is, only 13% of locals have ever bought clothing from the Nelson Environment Centre. But that means there's still a huge opportunity. There are around 50,000 people we can still encourage to shop second-hand. Another issue is, worn-out fabrics are really recycled, even though materials like polyester are similar to plastics, and plastics are widely recycled. Some people also avoid second-hand shopping because they see it as outdated, even though it's one of the most sustainable choices we can make. This is everyone's problem. Consumers, producers, community leaders, and those who deal with the waste. And we all have a role in the solution.
A few of the ideas that we found have been tried before are swapping events, where everyone brings unused clothes to swap for something they might wear more often. Loyalty programs. Studies show that 75% of customers prefer shops with reward programs. And another thing we found was upcycling workshops. And although we couldn't find any examples of op shops doing this, it is a creative way to give old clothes a second life. Advertising on social media is another one we found. By getting well-known people to encourage second-hand shopping, more people will get reminded that it is an option. And the final point we researched was doing events to boost popularity. Events give customers a reason to come to the store.
We have researched some existing solutions, and while there are a few, most would not work for us due to lack of time and resources. However, we have found a few that we think could work, such as pair with flair workshops and events, where you get an old piece of clothing that could be broken, and you repair it and you make it better. and recycling clothes that can't be resold.
Some of the areas we want to look into more are clothing swaps and recycling unsellable clothes. In clothing swaps, everyone brings in underused clothes and swaps them with someone else for something they'll wear more often. A clothing swap means you get rid of the clothes you no longer want while getting something you will wear. Some of the pros and cons of this is that while it's a good way to save both money and the environment, it may be hard to organize and find somewhere to host. Our second focus area is the recycling of clothes that can't be resold. As we said earlier, 18,000 tons of waste is thrown away each year in New Zealand. This is much more than it should and could be. Recycling unsellable clothes would be a great way to bring this number down, which is, in short, our goal.
So we want to see more swaps being held in the community. We think that this is a better strategy than advertising because, one, if we hold them at common locations, for example at schools, which is what we're wanting to do, then probably more people would come there than to the recycle center because it's quite tucked away. And two, people have assumptions about secondhand clothes. Like if some clothes come in contact with other stinky clothes, they all get stinky, like used gym socks. And I don't think anyone likes the smell of those. So we'd also like the recycle center to partner with us to take any potentially leftover clothes from the swaps events so that the schools don't have to deal with those, as that could be discouraging for them. And then the recycle center could also have a stall at the event where they could sell clothes from there for some advertising. Then another thing is that we can give people, especially stay-at-home mums and dads, a part-time job opportunity by telling them how to resell second-hand clothes from the recycle center, for example, online, as they would have enough time to do that.
But if we want to make all these wonderful things happen, we're going to need some support. Not just from the Nelson Environment Centre, but from you guys, the consumers, the people actually buying clothes. What we need is people willing to participate in second-hand shopping and make it cool again. Thank you.
And I've also already got some good news. We've already got one school that will support us in our journey to give us the space to hold the swap events.
I was quite interested in the recycling of clothing because I often wear my clothes until they wear completely thin and wouldn't dare give them to someone else. What avenues have you actually is recycling clothes an actual thing?
Yeah, I did have a look at that, and there are actually quite a few programs in Auckland that do recycle clothing, and they have quite good results I've seen. Can't quite tell you the numbers, but yeah, it's definitely a thing and an option.
Did you look at any relationship with retailers to recover clothes at retail locations? Say you're coming to buy something new, you could return something for recycle or repurpose. Also, retailers could maybe highlight items that are for sale with recycled content or something along those lines.
Yes, so we did look at that. There are some companies, but only very few that do that. But that would probably be because it costs a lot more to actually recycle them and to process them and find out like what's still good clothing that they can recycle, because that would probably cost more than just making new clothes. But good question.
Just a little idea. When you have a school event like a dance or a sports day when you're not wearing uniform, to make it a rule for that event that you have to wear clothes from an op shop, not new. And then another idea that some of us in this audience work to, which comes from the Take the Jump program, is to make a rule for yourself that you only buy 3 new things each year, and everything else has to be from an op shop.
So what you were talking about with the things at school, when we had a school dance at Nelson Intermediate, we had this op shop challenge where you would buy something from an op shop and wear it to the school dance, which was really fun. I remember I got a dress from an op shop and I altered it and made really cool stuff, and then I wore it to the dance and it was really fun.
Congratulations on altering it yourself. That's really good.
Oh yeah, what I'm wearing at the moment, this dress I got last week at the Nelson Environment Centre, and it was slightly big and weirdly shaped, so I sewed down the sides and now it fits better.
Have you looked at more teaching people how to sew things and darning and stuff?
We didn't quite look into that because we thought that getting the space for it would be really hard because you need sewing machines and stuff like that. But yeah, we did think that was a really good idea if it was possible.
Even teaching people how to darn stuff by hand repairs a lot of holes in old clothes.
So have you ever been swimming into Hunanui and it's just a complete, absolute, desolate wasteland? There's absolutely no reason to be wearing goggles because there's nothing to see. Well, believe it or not, before settlers came along and before all the pollution and the human intervention, there were actually a reason to wear goggles because there were things to see.
So this is our problem, is that we have low amounts of marine species in the Tasman Bay because they have no consistent habitats to produce and thrive in. Now, reasons for them to have no consistent habitats are things like high amounts of sedimentation, high temperatures in the water, and human intervention. So this is why we have low amounts of marine species in the Tasman Bay, which is a huge problem.
So our focus for this project is going to be on establishing that stable and consistent habitat, as previously mentioned. And when implementing this solution, we're going to be focusing on the sustainability, so it doesn't backfire on us. We're also going to be focusing on the efficiency with regard to cost, so we can secure the funding necessary, resources, so that achieving this is actually feasible, time, so that even if we do run over time, we've still completed some large milestones by the end of this course. And finally, we're going to be focusing on the impact that we're going to make, because it's the whole point, and we need to make as large a difference as we possibly can.
So things that have been tried previously by other people in other places, things like living seawalls, like in Sydney Harbour, where they put 3D printed concrete artificial reef structures on wharfs, which offered a place for fish to swim around in, kind of thing. Shipwrecks did the same thing, obviously sunken boats where fish could swim around in. Statues provide a tourist attraction, so you can kind of be cost efficient and get some money to pay for materials. And the California artificial reef was where they planted kelp forests, which increase water quality and marine biodiversity.
Things we need to think about when making artificial reefs is to not sink polluted materials that will negatively impact the marine ecosystems, such as unnatural oils, treated wood, and peeling paint. Some artificial reef designs mimic real coral reef structures, attracting more marine life. The California artificial reef is the most successful artificial reef ever created, so we can learn lots of aspects of what went well in that artificial reef.
Some areas that seem most promising for further exploration. The seawall looks promising. We can use recyclable materials, donated goods, and skills of others to implement this into the Tasman Bay. Our plan is to put a prototype of living seawall in the Tasman Bay during the duration of the EarthMinds course.
The outcome we hope to achieve is build back the marine ecosystem in Nelson Tasman Bay, encourage the marine life to come back into the bay. We want to do this by implementing a safe habitat where our marine life can thrive and be safe in, to promote further activity in helping the Nelson's marine life and hoping to make a real impact on the Nelson Tasman Bay and just our marine species.
Some resources or help we might need are donated resources from local organisations like Moana Oyster Hatcheries, MacLab or Cawthron, or even artists that are interested in creating structures to support marine life, like the living seawall. We also may need permission from the council to work in the Tasman Bay area, as well as funds or grants to support additional materials, and most importantly, public support to get people into the Nelson Tasman area and interested in preserving it.
Thank you. All right.
Thanks heaps for this. My question is a bit about how much research have you done into what the marine life actually is like in the Tasman Bay? Like, I'm hearing some solutions about seawalls and kind of reef structures, but I'm kind of wondering if our sea life here is a slightly different ecosystem that's not necessarily, seawalls are not a natural thing. So I'm curious if you have looked at more sandy shores or dunes or sandy, shallow bay ecosystems.
That's a very good question. We had a person come in from Cawthron, and he gave us a couple of these ideas about other seawalls, about the sunken shipwreck. In terms of seawalls being unnatural, he did mention how artificial reefs and these different habitats that are created by people are never going to be as efficient as the naturally generating ones. But the goal is still to try and replicate as accurate as possible a natural habitat, using different complexities in the design, which is what the seawall aims to do, based on its design, which we can hopefully achieve with some of the artists if we can get their support. And in terms of the current state of the marine in Nelson and the biodiversity there, I don't know any specific facts and figures, but I do know that it is something that is being worked on, and I do know that I don't see fish when I swim there. So, is there any specific information you're looking for beyond that?
That was more a seawall, seawalls are a hard structure that's been put in place to protect the road or something. But naturally, I guess the Rocks Road, that's maybe similar, but people are trying to build seawalls to protect areas that previously have been protected by dunes. So it is like looking more at sandy structures and actually going away from the hard structures. So that's more what I was thinking. Yeah.
Okay.
I think this relates also to the first team, because sedimentation is going to be really important, right? If you can reduce sedimentation, then you're going to have a much richer marine life. The other thing that is worth thinking about is water temperature increasing. It means you're going to get a different mix of fish species and other marine species. So you're not going to get back what was there originally. It's going to change over time. And you shouldn't expect to recreate what there was before. I think it's going to be different. It'd be interesting to know how different.
Is anyone already working on this in the Nelson Tasman region?
Well, I mean, we've spoken to the Cawthron people. They were sort of the ones who gave us the idea of the shipwreck one. The idea of the shipwreck is it's naturally just got a bunch of complexities. It should be pretty easy to implement, since you can just grab a random ship, strip it of harmful resources and just dump it in the ocean once you get a permit. With these complexities and like little crevices and little holloways, it's good for bringing in fish and all sorts of other life. So I guess if they're I'm not sure how underway they are in that, but yeah, they're still working on it.
Hawthorne they also have out in Uthfai, they have a seagrass farm, which I think is really beneficial to the water health in our moana currently and increases a lot of biodiversity, which I think is really effective right now and something to learn from.
Cool, thank you, Marine team. Give them a round of applause.
Hello everyone. At the end of the line is Jasmine, then Raphael, Michael, and I'm Jordan. And I have some questions for you. Did you know that New Zealand has one of the highest per capita rates of e-waste production in the world? And yet despite that, we have one of the lowest, only 2%, rates of e-waste recycling. E-waste is dangerous. It is dangerous to the workers who deal with it. It is harmful to the environment, and it is also a colossal waste of materials which could have been recovered and reused, but instead are lost forever when they are thrown away. One of the major reasons why people don't recycle e-waste is the cost. To my knowledge, nowhere in New Zealand is free to recycle e-waste. This cost comes mainly from the transport of e-waste to the right facilities in Nelson. That's usually to Auckland or Christchurch. Some countries like Estonia, Norway, and Sweden are making great progress in this issue with strong government legislation. But to push for something similar here, we would need strong public support. That's why now we have chosen to focus on raising awareness in the general public to make sure that you know just how important this issue is and why it matters to all of us.
New Zealand is on the high end of the spectrum when it comes to producing e-waste. So what are other countries doing to produce less e-waste than us? One of the main reasons us New Zealanders produce heaps of e-waste is that we lack laws and legislation. Many countries have legislation in place with goals to reduce e-waste, but did you know that New Zealand is the only country in the OECD without national laws on e-waste? This massively puts us at a disadvantage towards stopping e-waste. A few things that we have learned from these attempts at reducing e-waste is not only legislation, but convenience and awareness are key. The easier it is to recycle electronics, the more people participate, and the proper recycling is expensive, so many companies do choose to put profits before sustainability, mainly because people just don't know how much e-waste affects us. E-waste is an unrecognised threat to the environment. In fact, over 50 million tonnes of e-waste is produced every year. That's nearly the equivalent of 17 billion laptops. And that's over twice the amount of people than there are on Earth. So it's extremely important to raise awareness of this issue.
It would be great if there was a way, if you could take your old device to a school or a work or any big organization to be fixed or sold or stripped for even its variable parts. It would be good to have even events where you could bring your own device, even though it's old or broken or smashed up. It would be great for you to have it to be repaired or reused for many reasons.
We can collect these electronics and possibly give them to local repair stores, such as Endeavour Electronics and NTV services, and they can make good use of the materials from the collected devices. We really want to raise awareness of the problem that is affecting our environment. We would also love it if people could hold on to good, still working devices despite how old they are. We live in a world where every year there is a new and improved device on the market. But if you can keep your current device running for even a few years extra, it can make such a huge impact. We really need your help to make this happen. We need to promote public awareness, and it starts with all of you sitting here today. We would love to be able to talk to the council about our ideas on e-waste collection. Would appreciate talking to anyone who has any experience with repairing electronics so we can put our plans into action. Thank you for listening.
Kia ora, I loved your pitch. It was fantastic. I'm really interested in the idea of trying to reduce rather than getting to the end of the line having to recycle. Did you think about ideas of changing behaviours around getting new products and particularly targeting teenagers? I think all teenagers now have at least kind of one device, so that could be a good start.
Well, there's, like I said before, there's lots of marketing for the newer models, and so we really want to push that it can be fixed and it doesn't have to be thrown straight to landfill just to get the new model, because it can be working fine and it can still probably go on for quite a while before it needs to go into landfill.
Have you heard about there's a national organisation across New Zealand which is in a bunch of different schools called Recycle a Device, or RAD, and so I think they're meeting a couple of criteria that you're talking about like helping fix devices. You can walk in, you can dump a device and they can just help fix it, or they can loot it for parts. Have you thought about like working with them, or like helping publicise, or helping establish them in more schools? I know they're at Nayland. I don't know if they're at any other schools in the Nelson region, but...
Well, when we were researching previous solutions, obviously that name has come up quite a few times. We haven't reached out or anything, but anything that does raise awareness or helps people help fix devices that could be repaired, yeah, that would be great.
Have you reached out to any organisations, or do you have any organisations in mind that you would like to help you or give you funds?
Currently, we've been to the Environment Centre, specifically the electronic part of the Environment Centre, and brought around there. Other than that, it's not really. We've looked into many different things, but yeah.
Cool, thank you, e-waste team. Oh, one more.
Just last night I was at a meeting for the Nelson College for Girls Parents and Teachers Association, and we've got a rolling thing on our agenda of needing Chromebooks for some of our former refugee students. And I just wondered if you guys had thought about the who, in terms of often as we are more motivated to do something with our old devices if we know who it's going to, or if we can see a cause that will catalyse us to go into our cupboard and find these old devices and give them away. So just wanted to pop that out there.
Yeah, we definitely have looked into things like people who obviously need devices or don't have enough money to get devices, because as college and schools now generally need devices to do our learning, obviously lots of people don't have access to that, so we've definitely looked into helping those sort of people, yeah.
Also, like you're saying, in schools, mainly college, from like ages 13 to 18, you are required to have some sort of computer or laptop. And so if we can collect older ones or broken ones, there may be parts that can be reused to repair computers that can then be, that are maybe not working quite properly, that then can be resold at cheaper prices for people who might need it for education or work.
Over to you.
Hi, I'm Cosimo, and I'll be talking about what the main problem we are tackling is, and that is that lots of food is being wasted and being sent to landfill. This creates an estimated 6.5% of all global emissions. This problem is happening at all levels of the supply chain, from when farmers plan for what to plant, to when supermarkets decide that food has gone off, all the way to when us consumers throw out our leftovers.
As a group, our focus is to reduce food waste on farms and in supermarkets, in particular the food that doesn't meet cosmetic standards. We want to try to encourage reusing as much of that food as possible, for example, pricing it cheaper for preserving or cooking rather than fresh eating, or build composting systems on farms that can be reused and sustain another year's worth of growth and profit for the farm. We've had a lot of trouble reaching out to supermarkets for support on our idea. All of them were very reluctant to share information on what they're actively doing to tackle the issue of food waste and how much food is actually being wasted. All of them were just very keen to push the issue into the background and ignore it as much as possible. We didn't want to start off our project without some background knowledge on what's already been done, so now I'm going to hand things over to Jack to tell you more about our findings.
So there are a lot of existing solutions for tackling food waste. Across the country, there are many community organisations which help take food and rescue it. In Nelson, Tasman, we have Kai Rescue. So they go to supermarkets and they also go to some farms. So with supermarkets, any food that is going off and can't be sold anymore, they will snatch it up and distribute it to different community organisations to be given to people who may be in food insecurity or have a need for food. Since they began in 2017, they have rescued a grand total of slightly over 1 million kilograms of food from the region, which is estimated to have saved around 3 million kilograms of carbon emissions. And so another big solution to this problem is the stock systems in supermarkets. Many of the supermarkets across the country have their stock systems which will tell them when the fresh produce has been put on the shelf, so then they can make sure that it's actually getting sold before it might be going off. And so it can be distributed to things like Kai Rescue before it's gone off bad. One thing for food that is going off and can't be distributed to people anymore is to be fed to animals on farms, which is a really great way of sending it to a useful place instead of sending it to landfill. And one more recent scientific innovations that have been happening are plant-based coverings on food, which help increase the shelf life of them, such as companies like ED-Peel and A-Peel. However, they're quite expensive and not very widespread. So what can we learn from all of this? One major thing that stops Kai Rescue from having more impact is the fact that they rely on donations and volunteer work for everything they do. If they've got less volunteers, they're able to rescue less food. There are also a lot of gaps in the system. There's lots of places where there's less transparency, as Pierre said, or there's just places which food is being wasted. Yeah, okay, I'll pass on through.
Thanks, Jack. Some of the most promising ideas for further exploration are distributing food from people who don't have too much, from people who have too much to people who don't have enough, and rescuing food that would otherwise be thrown out.
Our goal is to save at least 500 kilograms of fresh produce from farms and households from going into landfill every week and create a system that is able to be used for generations to come. But at this stage, we don't actually have enough information to figure out what direction we want to tackle this problem from and where we can make the biggest impact in our community. So that's why we're here, to ask for your help.
We want help from local businesses to help us understand what is being wasted and what areas could have more improvement so we can know where to focus more on improving. Thank you.
Thank you for a great presentation, and you're dealing with a terrifically important issue. I would encourage you to try and keep lifting the lid on supermarkets. I've had reasonably positive experience in that area, and it seems to me that that's one of the missing links in your chain, is there's a lot of waste goes out of there, and it would be really good if you could be part of finding a path for it to get to a better destination.
Okay.
Just following on from Lindsay, yeah, I think you're doing an amazing, working on an amazing project. I wonder if you could work with those supermarkets to take that waste and preserve it somehow, for example, through jams or chutneys or other food solutions, and then sell it back to the supermarkets.
Hi. Have you looked into the waste that occurs just in the packing industry? I know that like every kiwi fruit that has a little bird poo on it just gets thrown away. They're not washed.
We haven't looked into that truckload, but we are well aware that it is quite a big issue of a lot of stuff doesn't even make it off of the farms because it isn't worthwhile them sending them to the supermarket because then they're going to have to pay for it to either be disposed of or shipped back to them because it doesn't meet their standards. So, yeah.
Kia ora. Just wondering, I think one focus could be to think about how much, let's say, whatever can be sold at the supermarket, something will go to Care Rescue. It's a big chunk, it's amazing, because it helps the community a lot. But whatever will go on landfill, that's what we really need to focus on, I believe, and what can be done to avoid for all of that to go into landfill. I would say probably to start focusing one supermarket, let's say whoever is giving to food bank, to Care Rescue can be willing to participate to a project like that and think about, okay, what can be done on a practical way to avoid anything from that supermarket that day to go into landfill. Even 1 day a week would be a great success. That's how I see it, one step at a time. Yeah. Thank you.
Cool, thank you. It seems like you guys need to go talk to some people after we finish. So thank you, food team. All right.
When you buy a drink at the supermarket, you drink it and then throw the container away. What does away actually mean? Have you ever thought about what happens to that bottle? What if you could refill it?
We have been given the task of trying to implement refillable juice systems into supermarkets. So what's stopping us? Supermarkets produce huge amounts of single-use plastic bottles. Our little New Zealand alone produces over 2 billion plastic bottles each year, with only over a third of them ending up in our landfills. A step in the right direction would be for these systems to be put into supermarkets. Unfortunately, there are many restrictions that prevent us from doing this, such as the very strict safety regulations, the cost of setup, and consumer demand, or lack thereof. While there are many people who are searching for eco-friendly alternatives, there are still a majority of people who are unaware of the impact plastic bottles have on our environment.
Our focus is to explore various methods to reduce single-use plastic bottles by implementing refillable juice systems in supermarkets, addressing health and safety issues, and increasing consumer demand. The most important of these problems is consumer demand, as supermarkets are often reluctant to address and overcome health and safety laws and other issues impeding these systems without a strong incentive to change or adapt to them. Because of this, we need to spread the word and grow the incentive for refillable juice systems to become a reality.
Right now, other countries are way ahead of New Zealand in recycling and refillable systems. One of the biggest examples is in France, the government passed a law that made large shops and supermarkets devote 20% of their floor space to refillable systems by 2030. Imagine having a top-up station of your favourite food and drinks. Although NZ is behind, we still have our own popular systems. Some of the things New Zealand has, for example, the local Rutherford Hotel juice system, where they have an airtight keg which Cheers is provided, and a fridge to cool the juice that makes the juices last a lot longer. And the Lewis Road Creamery in Auckland, where they teamed up with famous Whittaker's chocolate to make a much desired drink to put in the supermarket, with a popular refillable system that was extremely successful. Some providers are getting past the very restrictive food safety regulations, like Sunlight Supermarket Refill Scheme, that are currently in 2 Christchurch New Worlds using stainless steel reusable bottles, and the ever famous Oakland's Milk which you can refill glass bottles or get it delivered to you. But all of this isn't without challenge. The costs of bottles, packaging and transport, the ever-present food safety regulations, and finally, generating consumer demand.
It's okay.
Some ideas we have so far have been a standalone system. Instead of waiting for the government to change their regulations, what if we had a mobile system that travelled around and delivered juice or was available for refills? A deli system. We could install a system inside a supermarket, but beside the deli. This would be super accessible and easy to find for everyone, and supervision wouldn't be a problem because staff are always at the deli. To actually do these solutions, we need to get demand for them. Currently, there is nothing incentivizing supermarkets to put in a reusable system, so we need to create some groundswell. If we identify a good model, we could get consumer interest and create some. This would encourage supermarkets to install reusable systems and also educate the public.
Our best case scenario is to have Cheers's reusable system, refillable system into our supermarkets, to find a way around the very strict safety policies. Maybe by increasing consumer demand to reduce waste from plastic bottles, which will then incentivize supermarkets to consider implementing a refillable juice system model. But we understand that this is quite ambitious, so we also want to use this project as an opportunity to raise people's awareness of how much damage is caused by our single-use mindsets.
We could collaborate with other companies such as Oakland's and Lewis Road Creameries who are refilling and reusing their bottles and share the goal of reducing plastic waste. However, to do this, we need more consumer demand. We need to spread the word. We can help to advertise refillable juice systems in supermarkets by promoting a model that we can refine and perfect once we can learn of the specific health and safety regulations that are preventing supermarkets from making an immediate change. We could initiate a petition and promote it through posters with QR codes, displayed around or at supermarkets, schools, notice boards and in town. This will raise awareness that it is possible for us to return to our original practices with less plastic and waste. If we, the consumers, increase demand for less plastic consumption, we incentivise supermarkets to provide our drinks in ways that aren't harmful to the planet, and by extension, us.
Thank you for listening to our presentation. I hope this encourages you to at least think twice before buying single-use plastic bottles.
Thank you so much, guys. It is so exciting that you are out there solving this problem. I guess my question to you is, who else should be in the lineup? So if we're at the supermarket and Cheers's is selling their juice next to Oakland's on tap so that you can fill it from a container, who else do you want to be seen there, and how can we get them on board?
Apparently Lewis Road Creameries are already on tap. Is that in the supermarket? In Auckland, yes. So maybe following some of the way that they did it. But we're not really sure how they managed to get there. Oh, but I'm sure we can reach out to them. Yeah.
Is anyone else in particular, any type of, food or drink you think would be good to go with a refillable system?
Probably like soft drinks, because as you've probably noticed, there's like Coca-Cola, for example. They've got 1 million brands of drink out there, and they're basically all in plastic. So it would be really useful if we could encourage them to participate in reusable systems in supermarkets.
Cool, thank you.
What did you find when you looked at bottle exchange versus refillable containers?
So the question's refillable containers. So you bring your own container, refill it, versus a bottle exchange where you would swap them over.
The reason why we've done the reusable ones is because the supermarkets have really strict safety things, so they need to make sure that there's no contamination, even though it is your own container. And so they've kind of pretty much said there's
you're not allowed to bring anything in, and that's why it's become so difficult, is because to have our own containers, they need to be cleaned and all that, and so that's what we're working on at the moment.
One of the barriers at the moment to people using refillable systems is it can be more expensive than buying something from the supermarket and packaging. Have you talked to any companies about whether they would provide discounted products that would be cheaper if you refill it that way? Because that would be a way to get people on board.
We were thinking of maybe how it used to be done where you get some of your money back when you return the bottle. So maybe like at the cash register or something, the lady would give you back like maybe some money if you give back the bottle. So that can incentivize people to do that and actually return the bottles rather than just taking them. Yeah. We haven't talked to anyone in particular yet, but that'll be the next thing we need to do.
Cool, and this is, I guess, why we're here. So if anyone has any contacts of companies, Coca-Cola, for instance, that can help, then I guess this is why you guys are here. So, okay, let's give them a bit of a round of applause. Thank you, Chair Sisters. Get a photo of you guys. I wonder if, Rohan, I can kind of get you up for a second just to get some thoughts. Would love to hear any observations you've had, any kind of comments or words of encouragement for some of these teams. So if I can thank Rohan for coming up and just sharing his impressions.
Oh, God, everyone, thank you so much. That was really, like, as someone who spends most of my job being like listening to people who are paid to come up with ideas, I just want to acknowledge like the clarity in which you all presented and in your understanding of the issues and how we can start to address them. The real thing that stuck out to me was just your bravery, not in coming up and presenting, but actually all of the issues you chose are really, really big and can so easily be incredibly overwhelming. And the fact that you chose them, and have been persevering through to come up with genuine solutions really filled my heart with joy, because I was listening as you were talking through some of the problems going, oh yeah, I know, that's so much. And to be able to have that burst of positivity of actually, there are things we can be doing now. I have I was scribbling a lot of notes, a few high-level thoughts. First, I think we always have to ask ourselves, what is the current cost? When we're evaluating the costs of alternatives, often we start at zero and work our way up. But without doing the maths on, well, for something like sedimentation, how much money are we currently spending downstream already dealing with all of those impacts versus how much it would cost to regulate and create a system where those impacts didn't exist at all. And the same is true across all of the issues you looked at. To our clothing team, I can proudly declare that this 50% of my outfit is secondhand.
Very good.
I was whispering to Rachel with nervousness that if they make it too cool, my shopping experience will be a lot harder because other people will have taken all of the good bits, but that's a problem I am more than happy to endure. For the marine team, can I recommend you check out what they've done in Wellington as part of their Cycleway program round to Lower Hutt, where they've built what our former Transport Minister called, I think, fish temples, but have been a really effective way of supporting the ecosystems there. The e-waste team, yeah, it's a very, very big one. I can do a quick shout out to if you have small amounts of e-waste, you can drop them off at the Nelson City Council reception, and without a charge we will recycle them. But again, how do we reduce at source? And so all of your ideas around that were really exciting. Share children, actually I'll do this pitch to the parents, which is, and maybe you can look at some similar, but not quite the same spaces where this is currently happening for ideas, which is in Nelson you can get refillable wine, but looking at how they've managed to navigate the regulations to allow that to happen. But finally, I'd just say there's always this conflict where we think of the status quo as common sense, and I think the way you've broken down these issues has showed how untrue that is. And so really, for me, keep going. If there's anything I can do to support your ideas, I will be so happy to. And remember that this is something that takes all of us, and all of your energies and passions is so worth the time you're putting into it, because even if, you know, and so many ideas fail to get off the ground, and even if they do, I can say, just from this, walking away, you've given me a new spring in my step to get back into the council building and keep fighting to address some of the systemic issues here, but I really can't wait to see your practical solutions on the ground coming to life.
Cool, thank you.